The Atlanta Braves have made their first trade at the 2026 trade deadline, acquiring Lane Thomas from the Kansas City Royals. And in response, the Dodgers went out and got Tarik Skubal. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on into Braves Today, a production of the Belief Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby, author of the Braves Today newsletter over at bravestoday.com. If this special little bonus episode sounds a little disjointed, it is 1:45 in the morning Eastern Time on Saturday night / Sunday morning. I just wrapped up my responsibilities with Locked On doing MLB Game Night, where we talked about every single game that was played, but then also talked about the Skubal deal. And I'll get to that in a few minutes. I want to talk about the Lane Thomas trade first. Braves get Lane Thomas and lefty reliever Bailey Falter in a trade with the Royals, and the return going back, Carter Holton and Lucas Braun, two minor league pitchers. And we're going to get to those guys in a minute. But I think first, what's important to understand about the Lane Thomas acquisition, and I know if you're the type of person that watches Braves Today, listens to Braves Today, ball, and you know this, but so many people are getting this wrong. They see a guy who's hitting .230 this year, and they are frustrated that this is the acquisition. That is not what Lane Thomas is here to do. Lane Thomas, because of injuries and other issues in Kansas City, was forced into two roles that he is not suited for. The first role was full-time starter. He's playing against lefties. He's playing against righties. He is a part of that roster and part of that lineup every single day. And the other role that he wasn't necessarily suited for was center field. And he's playing center field every single day. And he doesn't grade out that well in center field. Lane Thomas is one of those odd guys. He has fantastic speed, 93rd percentile of 29.1 feet per second. Very strong arm, but his range is awful. And a lot of that, when you dive into the fielding, it ends up coming down to he doesn't have great jumps. The initial reaction, the burst, all of that stuff, not that good. The routes are pretty efficient. He gains ground compared to the average outfielder on routes, but he's starting behind the eight ball from the reaction and from the burst. So because of that, Lane Thomas doesn't grade out well. We're not going to use him in center field. That's the plan. And the plan is not to use him against righties. The plan is to use him in a corner, and the plan is to use him against lefties. And Alex Anthopoulos said that after the trade. Quote, Thomas is an accomplished big league player. He's been an everyday player. That's not the planned role for him now, and he knows that. I told him there's not complete clarity yet because we're still working through some things. But the plan is certainly not the exact same role he had in Kansas City, where he was playing every day in center. His strength is hitting left-handers. Great guy, great in the clubhouse, and just excited to add him and make our team stronger. When AA says strength is hitting left-handers, he is not joking. This season, Lane Thomas is hitting .263 with an 800 OPS against lefties. But if you know me, you know I do complain about sample sizes from time to time. And he has 135 at-bats against lefties this year. So what I did was pulled a larger sample size. If you go back to the start of 2023 for Lane Thomas, 519 plate appearances is pretty close to a full season, right? 600 is what we look at as a full season of plate appearances. So 519 is pretty close. He has a 135 WRC plus against left-handers across the last 4 full seasons. 3.5, 23, 24, 25, and so far in 2026. And it's been remarkably consistent almost every single year. He has a double-digit walk rate against lefties. His strikeout rate is low 20s against lefties. It had been as low as 17, 18, 19% earlier in his career, earlier in this sample, actually. But the strikeout rate went up, the walk rate went up with it. So this year is actually the lowest OPS of the 4 he's had against lefties. It is still an 800. And the ISO slug is better than it was last year when he was with Cleveland. And again, he was miscast in Cleveland as a center fielder, another situation where he was not best suited for that. But what Lane Thomas is here, think of this like when you had Eddie Rosario and Kevin Pillar in 2023. One guy played against righties every day. The other guy played against lefties. And when one left the game and they went to the bullpen and they'd bring out a lefty, you'd swap one outfielder for the other. That's what you're doing here with Lane Thomas. He is here to crush lefties. Any contributions he can give you in left are helpful. Like Braves left fielders collectively, and most of this has been Mauricio Dubon and Mike Yastrzemski. Braves left fielders collectively have a 646 OPS. That is the second worst mark in left field in the entire league. So even if you were to say, hey, Lane Thomas, we're going to make you an everyday player. He has a 717 OPS as an everyday player this year. So even if you were to do that, it would be an improvement over what you've been getting in left field. But again, the Braves aren't going to do that. Alex Anthopoulos specifically said his strength is left-handers. He's not an everyday player. That the planned role for him is not to be an everyday player. So the questions that I have here now, you got to figure out not only playing time, but the roster. And it's not just Thomas. You've got a couple other moving pieces right now. They returned Ha-Seong Kim from his rehab assignment after tonight's finale for Gwinnett. They were in Durham, so he's not physically back yet. Let's talk about when Thomas will report. Let's talk about when Kim is due back and some of the options on the roster, what you do with all of that. And then we'll get to Skubal. We'll do that next right here on Braves Today. The other part of the trade, by the way, and I do want to cover the prospects that we moved out. Bailey Falter was the lefty pitcher. ERA is atrocious this year. He only has 5 appearances. He is a lefty swingman. He's going to go to Gwinnett. He'll start in Gwinnett. And we honestly don't know if he'll make it back up or not. In the words of AA, quote, he'll be depth. He's off the roster. The focus of this deal was Thomas. As discussions evolved, Bailey Falter was included in this, and he'll be depth for us in Gwinnett. Which tells me, this is me, not AA talking, tells me this was a money thing by the Royals. That Bailey Falter is in his second of 4 arbitration years. And he was making $3.6 million, and they had him in AAA most of the year. So it's in MLB cap parlance, they called it a buried salary, right? You still have to pay it. It still counts against your CBT and everything, but it's a salary that it's entirely at the minor league level. So he'll be there. AA said, quote, if he throws well and we have a need, he's had experience at the big league level and he's had success in the past at the big league level. Obviously, it hasn't gone the way he hoped in the current year. The focus of this trade for the big league team was Lane Thomas, and that's not to be disrespectful. It's just stating the facts. And AA's right. Bailey Falter has not been good. Bailey Falter has been bad. And when you look at the StatCast and you look at some of the under the hood stuff, it's still a lot of bad. There's not a lot of things to like there other than the fact it's a starter's mix. It's a 5-pitch mix. He was a former 5th rounder in 2015. He's 29 years old. He was mostly a starter the last 2 seasons. He had ERAs in the mid-4s in 24 and 25. And this year's kind of, the struggles are, I'm not going to say out of nowhere, right? The peripherals have never been good, but he was able to get by. His expected ERAs were all around 5. and he was able to put up marks around 4-4 the last couple seasons. Is it possible that Atlanta makes some tweaks here? Yeah. When I kind of glance at this profile, 4-seam, slider, curve, sinker, splitter, throwing the splitter a lot more. I don't think the sinker's a true sinker. That all of the locations and kind of the movement profiles are in the middle of the 4-seamers. But there are some things you can do as far as, again, 4-seamer, splitter, curve. Not having a traditional changeup as a lefty is an odd thing. Usually you see those guys have something that moves away from a righty. Splitters don't really do a ton of that. And again, the sinker's not moving like a traditional sinker. It's moving just like a 4-seamer, where I think it's just a misread. Probably things you can do with him. That's not important. When it comes to Lane Thomas, this is how I get off track, and because it's, again, now it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I apologize. When it comes to Lane Thomas, he is reporting to the roster ahead of Tuesday's game. Trade deadline is Monday at 6 p.m. And this is all allowed, right? When a guy is traded, they are given 3 days to report. So they're taking the 3 days. I'm sure some of that is strategic by Atlanta because they want to make sure that they have time to figure out, hey, we're going to have to make a spot. Can we trade somebody? Or is somebody on the roster asked for in a trade as part of this? So what do you do? Who moves? The part that's hard is when you combine this plus Ha-Seong Kim coming back, plus Sean Murphy being due back soon. 3 spots. And those 3 spots are going to come from a group of 4 or 5 guys. Okay. Dom Smith, who hit a home run on Saturday night, has been hitting a little better as of recently, but on the whole has not been very good this year. Okay. That's option number 1 there. The kind of obvious analog that's at the same position, a similar profile to Lane Thomas, but not as accomplished, is Eli White. There's a possibility that Eli White loses a job and a roster spot this weekend. He's the type of player where I assume the Braves would try and flip him in a deal. They would try to get something of value for him. He is not the kind of player you would just DFA and hope he made it through waivers, because that's not very likely to happen. So that's another option. Jorge Mateo. That would be a decision where you were saying, hey, Mauricio Dubon is going to be part of our shortstop group on a regular basis, and Mateo's going to go. The thing with Thomas, from a speed perspective, he does a lot of the same stuff speed-wise that Eli White does. They're both incredibly fast players. Lane Thomas is sitting there at 29.1 feet per second. He's an above-average base runner. Eli White's slightly faster. Eli White doesn't grade out as well on base running, although in Eli White's defense, that's an accumulation stat, and Eli White is not a full-time player. He has less opportunities to accumulate that than Lane Thomas does. I'm really worried that Eli White's going to be the odd man out here when it comes to Lane Thomas. And again, we'll find out in a couple of days. They have to make this move by Tuesday. I imagine they're going to make this move by the end of the trade deadline on Monday. Ha-Seong Kim was returned from the rehab assignment tonight. And what that means, Atlanta now has 48 hours to create a roster spot or put him back on the injured list. And if they put him back on the injured list, the league is already checking medical records on injured list placements to avoid the phantom IL. They would double up on that because he just played a full 20 days of rehab. If Atlanta tried to then say, hey, he's hurt, it would absolutely get flagged by the league, and the Braves would be punished if they couldn't substantiate it with medical records. So your options are reinstate Ha-Seong Kim. That means making a roster spot, which means probably either you DFA Jorge Mateo or trade him, or you option Jim Jarvis back to Gwinnett. We got a note from Jesus Cano, friend of the show, Braves beat writer for The Athletic, who said that I don't have the exact text in front of me, But he said, in essence, if Jorge Mateo were to be DFA'd, there would be a lot of unhappy people in that clubhouse. Jorge Mateo is one of the players that is well-liked within the organization. And so if they were to do that, found it. One of the possibilities is Jorge Mateo getting DFA'd if they believe in Jim Jarvis. A lot of people in the clubhouse are going to be very pissed if that happens to Mateo. That is Jesus' language right there in the tweet from Saturday afternoon. And he is in that clubhouse every single day. Just about. The Athletic doesn't always send them on the road. I don't think he went to Baltimore. But for the most part. The third option, and I talked about this a little bit in the short on Saturday afternoon. The third option is you either DFA or trade Kim. I am of the opinion, and people are not going to agree with me, and that's fine. I am of the opinion that just a straight DFA of Ha-Seong Kim is dumb. It's a waste. Because you're probably going to be able to find someone to take him and give you something, especially if you're willing to pay a salary, right? $20 million deal. So if you were to move him at the deadline, it's just over $6 million is what he's still owed. And I think about the fact that you got Jim Jarvis out of Detroit for Rafael Montero. The Braves front office staff, not AA, he deflected the credit here, identified something in Jarvis that they liked. They gave him the name. He suggested it to Scott Harris with the Tigers. They got Jarvis. Worst case scenario, there's something like that out there somewhere. Find one of these teams that needs a shortstop. I've suggested the Pirates. The Pirates have Connor Griffin. He's out injured. And so because of that, they're running a lot of like Jacob Gonzalez or Nick Gonzalez, actually, I think. Jacob Gonzalez, who they got in trade from the White Sox, or Nick Gonzalez, who was already in the organization, played a lot of third base. They're running one of the two of those guys a lot at short. Sometimes they're running Jared Triolo at short. The issue here, none of those guys are that great. Triolo has an OPS in the low sixes. Jacob has an OPS in the mid sixes. Nick Gonzalez does have an OPS in the sevens, but he's also not good defensively. So offer them Ha-Seong Kim because he costs nothing. The Braves can pay the salary and they can get some sort of spec out of the Pirate system. Somebody who they're either ready to move on from, who they've gone up and down and don't think he's worth anything anymore. If you're doing that pitching-wise, I'd say give me Hunter Barco. I'm sure they want to keep Hunter Barco, but I would probably ask. What's more likely is you're going to get some lower level. If he's even ranked, he's 47th in the system, something like that, right? Their 36th rated pitching prospect who's in single A or a guy who's out or something like that. But it's better than nothing. And it solves the problem of that way you keep Jarvis and Mateo, because if you're dead set on bringing Kim back to the roster, and again, it has to be by Monday, Mateo is probably the one that's most likely to go through waivers. Simply because Jarvis would be claimed, right? Jarvis would be claimed, a lot of control. Kim is probably going to get claimed. And I think Kim could also elect free agency. I'm not sure. Mateo, if you can get him through, is a profile you probably would want to add back to the roster for September in the postseason when the rosters expand, because he's such a good pinch runner for you. The issue is you can't get rid of both him and Eli White. You've got to keep one of those guys around, because if Thomas is in the game and Yaz goes in for him when a righty comes on the mound, and then you need a pinch runner, you got to have one of those guys available. So the Braves have to figure out what they're going to do here. None of these are great options. Before we get into the Tarik Skubal thing, because we're going to get into the Tarik Skubal thing, let's real quick talk about the prospects that got moved, okay? The Braves moved Carter Holton and Lucas Braun. And the proper way to think about these guys, and this is a thing that I wrote about a week ago. I talked about this a little bit on the show. Lucas Braun has never. He's projected to be a dependable depth starter. And that's not as valuable to us as it is to somebody else. Right? And like, he's been good in the minors. He's never posted an ERA above 4. I don't believe. Maybe like a really brief, like less than 70 innings in one of the lower levels. But on a full season basis in Atlanta's farm system, his full season ERAs, 267, 326, 367, 353. He has an ERA under 4 in AAA right now. He had an ERA under 2 in AAA last year. And yet Atlanta had a ton of pitching injuries, and they apparently never even discussed calling him up. Lucas Braun's most likely outcome, I think he's a major leaguer. Lucas Braun's most likely outcome is back-end starter. And that is just not something that is super, super valuable to Atlanta like it is to a Kansas City Royals team who has a bunch of veterans who are hitting free agency, and they don't have a really great pitching pipeline, and they're going to need more arms. So that's why that deal was made. The Carter Holton deal is a little bit different here, okay? Carter Holton has been a guy who's been held back because of injury. He's actually lower on the composite. He's 25th on the composite, whereas Braun sits at 17.8, so 18, really. When Taylor did Braves Today's rankings, Braves Today has prospect rankings. If you missed it, I haven't done a show on it yet because I was waiting for after the trade deadline. But he did Taylor did a top 50 for the Braves. He doesn't have Carter Holton in there. Because 1, Carter Holton's been hurt, and 2, his rankings are based on upside. And Carter Holton, 1, in the minors, he has thrown 43 2/3 innings since getting drafted in 2024. He has thrown 41 2/3 of those this year. And there's just a lack of info, and there's a lack of projectable upside. And not everybody agrees with Carter, right? Carter is clearly the low man on Carter Holton. There are places that have him much higher. Baseball America has him at 30. Fangraphs has him at 23. Battery Power didn't have him on their list either. Braves Today didn't have him. Battery Power didn't have him. MLB Pipeline didn't have him. Baseball America had him, but barely. These were Holton's a long shot to make the majors because he's been so far behind on development because of the injuries, even coming out of Vanderbilt. Braun is a likely major leaguer, but as a swingman or a number 5 at best. Expendable. That's the kind of prospect capital you should be moving. Look at the rotation as of a day or two ago, full of number 4, number 5s. And the guys behind them, you think about like a J.R. Ritchie and guys like that, guys that project as number 4, number 5s. Why would you keep a 9th one in the organization when you've got 8 in front of them? Makes sense. I don't know where we are in relation to the break. I think it's time for one. Let's take one. When we come back, let's talk about the Tarik Skubal deal. Because it's really odd. The Dodgers were in a really good place where they were able to make this and it not cost them as much as it would cost everybody else. The return's a little odd. We'll break all of that down next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today, Lindsay Crosby. Yeah, Dodgers are getting Tarik Skubal. The thing we all expected. The package here is really weird. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about going off of prospect rankings, people I've talked to around the industry, and what they thought an equivalent package would have been. And speculate a little bit on why Detroit didn't try to hold out for more here. So the actual deal was outfielder Zaire Hope, right-hander River Ryan, and then righty Braden Smith. And when you look at these players, Hope is number 55 overall on Baseball America's Top 100. Number 6th prospect in the organization. And right there, that should tell you that the Dodgers system is stacked. Because he's a top 55 player, and there's 5 other players better than him on LA's top 30. And the reason that this worked so well for the Dodgers is because most of those guys in front of him are also outfielders. He was number 6. 3 of the 5 guys ahead of him were also outfielders. Jose De Paula, Mike Sirota, Eduardo Quintero. All 3 of them are outfielders. So they were able to move a top 50 prospect that was at a position that Detroit apparently wanted, that was an organizational strength or a farm system strength. You know what's funny? Right behind Zaire Hope was another outfielder, Charles Davilan. And then a couple spots down, 11 and 13, 2 more outfielders, James Tibbs and Kendall George. They're over-indexed on outfielders. If you think about it, it makes sense. Mookie Betts is older. Teoscar's older. Kyle Tucker's not signed long-term. It makes sense to have extra outfielders. The problem you have, and we've talked about this before, is if you're already in the outfield, you're not going to flex back to the infield in most situations. Mookie's a freak of nature. Most situations, you're not going to flex back to the infield, so you have less flexibility with these guys. So use them in deals. The River Ryan thing, people are hung up on the fact that River Ryan's 27 years old and he's still a prospect. River Ryan debuted 2 years ago. No, I'm sorry, he debuted in 24. That's right, he debuted in 24. And then he blew out in 24, had Tommy John, missed all of 25, and then suffered a hamstring injury while prepping for the season this year. He's just about ready to come back. He's probably going to be making starts for Detroit within the next 2 weeks. But he would have debuted, he would have been a major leaguer pitching every 5th day or 6th day in LA because they get an extra starter, remember? He would have been pitching at age 25 were it not for these 2 injuries back-to-back. And he's got great velocity. He could touch 100 on his fastball. It's probably a 70 grade. He's got a really good slider, sits upper 80s. He's got a curveball and changeup that are both above average pitches. He does have some walk issues, but everything about him screams, yes, this guy is just outside the top 100 as a prospect, except for the fact he's 27. And then Brady Smith is in the back end of that top 30, and he is tons of traits. Super projectable kid. 3rd round in 2023, had Tommy John, didn't start pitching in the majors or in the minors until 25. He's in single A right now. Again, mid to upper 90s on a fastball, changeup, cutter, slider, curveball. Has to improve the secondary pitches. The changeup's pretty good. Fastball changeup pairing is really good already. Got to improve the rest. But back end starter to a reliever. If this works out, if he can take those secondaries, if he can find swing and miss from a breaking ball, he's probably a back end starter. And if not, he's probably a pretty decent reliever already. The equivalent package for Atlanta, depending on how you look at it, would not have been fun. You could have done it. Wouldn't have been fun. And again, I talked to some people in organizations or in prospect evaluation trying to figure this out a little bit through some DMs and some text messages on Saturday night. An equivalent package using just the prospect rankings would have been Eric Hartman as the Zaire Hope stand-in. Hartman is higher in the top 100 than Hope is, but still a reasonable analog. Owen Murphy as the lower ceiling River Ryan stand-in, which helps make up for the extra value that Hartman has over Hope. And then instead of Smith, it would have been something like an Ethan Bagwell or maybe a Garrett Bowman, right? And that's a package you probably could have done, assuming assuming the Tigers would have taken it. And we don't know why the Tigers took this deal. One of the kind of common responses on social media among baseball people has been this probably wasn't predicated just off of rankings. It was probably they liked Ryan. They were able to get a top 100 position player to go along with him, and then they threw in a spec arm towards the back end there. So if you take that framework, right? If you take the framework of the roles these guys would play, then you're looking at a different type of package for Atlanta. You're looking at River Ryan would be, the analog there would be AJ Smith-Shawver. A majors ready arm with a higher ceiling, right? Then you probably would have gone something like an Owen Murphy and a Garrett Bowman. Still a doable package. I do think it would be a mistake to move AJ Smith-Shawver in a deal for a rental, because if you're getting a rental starter, you're going to have to backfill that spot with an impact starter, and I think AJ Smith-Shawver would have been that guy. If I could have made the deal, if the deal was Owen Murphy, J.R. Ritchie, Garrett Bowman, and another one of the top three, right? A South Ascene or a Hartman or whatever, it would have been too rich for me. And Baseball America proposed some of this, by the way. Baseball America did a proposal on what a Braves package would look like before this deal went down. It was like a day or two ago. And their proposal was Cam Caminiti, Tate Southasine, so 2 top 100 prospects, both in the back half, Connor Essenberg, and Roldy Munoz. The thing that I don't understand here is so many teams could have met this package, and they chose not to. The Cubs could have met it. They chose not to. The Rays could have met it, and they chose not to. The Brewers could have met it and chose not to. All teams that we know were in on Skubal. And the Braves could have met the package. This tells me either the Tigers, for some reason, wanted to deal with LA, or maybe the price wasn't going to be as high as we thought. And that's going to suck if that's the case. That's going to hurt. If it comes out in the next couple days that there weren't really a ton of offers and you could have swooped in with a Hartman, Murphy, Bagwell package and maybe have gotten Skubal, that's going to be frustrating. It really is. But the people who... There have been some kind of irrational reactions to Skubal. Anything involving the Dodgers gets irrational reactions. And something that I kind of want to address on it real quick. This is going to ruffle some feathers. And I'd apologize. It's 2:30 in the morning. I don't know how much I care at this point. The Dodgers have more money than everybody. And there are some structural advantages there. MLB gave them a sweetheart deal on their TV deal. And so they make $60 million more a year than the next closest team on the TV deal. There are a couple things that they have that work for them that nobody else gets. But they are also the best team in baseball at virtually every single aspect of a baseball operation. They are the best teams at developing prospects. They are the best at scouting. They are the best at trading. They are the best at identifying and acquiring and fixing dudes who were broken. And they have a willingness. They have 2 things that virtually nobody else in the league has. 1, a willingness to move prospects. And 2, a virtually undefeated track record of only moving the ones that are likely not going to work out. There have been guys who have been traded away from LA who have been good. Michael Busch is a good first baseman for the Los Angeles Dodgers. For the Chicago Cubs. Ryan Pepio, when he's been healthy, is a good starter for the Rays. But they are really good, like Alex Anthopoulos has been good, but I'd argue even better, at knowing which guys to move and which guys to keep. And the response I keep getting when I talk about Dodgers prospects and having all this prospect capital is people claiming that the Dodgers are a purchase team and not a homegrown team. And I think we get clouded by the fact that they have so many stars that signed in free agency. But on the 40-man roster right now, Atlanta has 15 homegrown players. The Dodgers have 11. You look at other big market teams, the Yankees have 10. Boston has 7. And when you look at LA, and it's like, yes, they have 13 free agents on their 40-man roster right now. Atlanta has 12. They have more trade acquisitions than we do. The Dodgers are really good at identifying, and people are like, none of the prospects that they trade have worked out. That's how it's supposed to work. Most of the prospects we trade don't work out. If the Atlanta Braves call you and offer you a pitcher, hang up the phone and figure out why they want to get rid of that guy. If the Tampa Bay Rays call you and ask for one of your hitters, especially if he was an international hitter, hang up the phone and find out what they know that you don't. But if you look at the track record of the Los Angeles Dodgers, they continuously get all of these prospects. They make them into very good prospects. They trade the ones that aren't going to work out, and they keep the ones that do. And because they're a winning team and because they're spending so much money, their first draft picks are usually in the 30s and 40s. And they're still able to build this fantastic farm system. And it's, yes, they traded Michael Busch. You know who they didn't trade? Andy Pages. Know who they didn't trade? Will Smith. They're in a position similar to what we are with pitching. It's really hard to break into the Dodgers lineup unless you are an impact player. Because they had Freddie Freeman at first base. Michael Busch is a good first baseman. Freddie Freeman's better. They've traded away a bunch of catchers because they had Will Smith. It's really hard to be better than Will Smith, and you only need one backup. Pitching-wise, yes, they've spent a lot of money on signing Yoshinobu Yamamoto and trading for Tyler, paying Tyler Glasnow and Blake Snell and all those guys. You know who's going to start today? Emmett Sheehan. Drafted him in the 6th round. They've not moved him yet. Now who's going to start? I think he's the scheduled starter on Monday. Justin Robleski. He was an 11th rounder. He has an ERA under 3. And it's 112 innings. It's not like it's just fluky sample size stuff. He has an ERA under 3. He was an 11th round pick. Will a salary cap help to keep them from signing all of the stars, it feels like, right? Going out and signing a Kyle Tucker and paying him $60-something million a year when you factor in penalties and everything? Probably, sure. They're still going to be the best at scouting. They're still going to be the best at developing. They're still going to be the best at trading. They're still going to be the best at knowing when to move a prospect and when to keep him. But you know what? Even with all of that money, they were 1-2 steps bigger lead at third base by Isaiah Kiner-Falefa from losing the World Series last year. Adding Tarik Skubal does not mean that they automatically are going to win a third World Series. Are they the favorites? Yes. Should they be the favorites? Yes. Braves today sponsor FanDuel. Dodgers plus 145 to win the World Series as of 2:30 in the morning on Saturday night, Sunday morning. But Braves are still on this board. They almost didn't. They barely won it last year. They were a year older since then. They added Tarik Skubal. Yes, he's a very good pitcher. Braves beat him earlier this year. You know what happened when he pitched for the Tigers in the postseason? I think it was 24, 25? It was 24. It was ALDS Game 5. They lost to Cleveland. You know why they lost to Cleveland? Lane Thomas hit a grand slam off of Tarik Skubal. There's a bunch of folks who just want to roll over. They just want to, there's no point in trading prospects. Dodgers are going to win it. Let's fight. Braves will make some more trades. They made a trade on Saturday. We've got positions, things to figure out on Saturday and Sunday. Let's do it. Let's beat the Dodgers. And if we don't beat the Dodgers, guess what? Still a good season. Still had fun along the way. And we tried. And as much as I'm frustrated and annoyed that Tarik Skubal is now a Dodger, they're going to get probably 10 starts of one of the best pitchers in baseball added to their rotation. Season's not over. And you have a choice. And the choice is either roll over and just give the title to the Dodgers now or make them earn it. I want to make them earn it.